Wisconsin Republican Governor Scott Walker has become something of a conservative rock star for his high-profile clash with organized labor. He is now teaming up with a former Bush speechwriter for a new book that will be due out later this year. Question, is this a prelude to 2016? Well, here now is the guy who broke that story, CNBC contributor Robert Costa. He's the Washington editor for the National Review. And with us for the remainder of the hour, we bring in Democratic strategist Chris Kofinas, and Guy Benson from townhall.com. All right, Mr. Costa, so he's writing a book. What's so important about that?
Sure, Larry. It's years before the Republican presidential primary actually starts, but we're in a period right now that I like to call the book primary. And if you're looking seriously at running for president, you better be writing a book. And it looks like Scott Walker is not only writing a book, but he's teamed up with Mark Thiessen, who's the former chief speechwriter for President George W. Bush. That means he's a heavyweight, he's working with a heavyweight, and he's someone who we definitely have to consider is looking at 2016.
All right, so just let me follow through on this. Jeb Bush wrote a book. What does that mean?
Jeb Bush wrote a book about immigration and about immigration policy. Interesting book, wasn't a big bestseller, got a little bit of attention. But why Scott Walker's book's a little more interesting from a political perspective is Scott Walker's book's much more of an autobiography talking about his experience in Wisconsin, battling the public sector unions, battling in the recall. And to me, that tells me as a political reporter that Walker wants to tell his story nationally rather than, in the Jeb Bush example, making a policy case.
And you know, Guy Benson, in a sense, nobody has done what Scott Walker did to the unions up there and to balancing the budget and the way he did it and the fact that he had to win a second election in 2 years. Really, no one has done what Scott Walker has done.
That's absolutely right, and he's up for a re-election next year. And I think we can look past just the tea leaves of this book. I asked the governor directly at CPAC, are you considering a presidential run in 2016? And he adamantly would not rule it out. He wouldn't even rule out the possibility of saying that he wouldn't do a full second term if he won in 2014. So I think that
that's very interesting.
Yeah,
that's very interesting.
Yep, there's a real indication here that Scott Walker has the tools to get the job done.
And wins big in 2014. That is a springboard. That is a huge launching pad, given the fact that Wisconsin is a state Republicans haven't won in how long?
Well, he would have won statewide office 3 times in the span of 4 years if he wins again next year, which I think he's pretty well positioned to do.
All right, Chris, I'll come to you because there's a couple of Democrats that are contemplating books. I did a little homework today. One of the names is Hillary Clinton, looking into it. Another name is Andrew Cuomo, looking into it. What's your take there? Is this serious stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's serious on both counts. My guess is that, you know, Secretary Clinton's going to take some time off, obviously, and kind of evaluate where things are and decide whether she runs. If she runs, she's the proverbial front runner, I would say, not only in the Democratic primary, but also across the field.
But she was in 2008 also.
Yeah, you still have to run a good, you still have to run a good campaign. You have to run a strong campaign. But she has an incredible record. Now, that's not going to be enough. You still have to have a vision in terms of where you want to lead the country.
What's so great about her record? What did she do as Secretary of State? Seriously. Let me just say this. I respect her. I'm something I would admire her. But when I hear this business about what she did as Secretary of State, Obama called all the shots, and they bungled Benghazi.
No, that's not true. If you look in terms of
Benghazi?
There were mistakes made, but if you look in terms of her record, in terms of dealing with the Middle East and the turmoil that happened there, in terms of the withdrawal from Iraq, dealing with Afghanistan.
Israeli hater running Egypt? And what's going on in Syria? The whole spring thing is the whole spring thing's falling apart.
I think the overwhelming majority of Americans think she has been a fantastic Secretary of State, so that's a positive.
Robert Costa, do you think Hillary Clinton's been a fantastic Secretary of State? I want to hold that point for a minute.
I think it's a fair question to ask. I think Benghazi was really a mark at the end of her tenure that's really going to cause a lot of problems if she runs in a general election in 2016. But the bigger question for Hillary Clinton's this. She hasn't been on a ballot in a few years. She's the Clinton name. Is the country ready for another Clinton? Do they want another Clinton, regardless of what she did as Secretary of State?
Do we have a presidential frontrunner in the GOP for 2016?
Not really. You have a few front runners, but there's no Mitt Romney this time who's really taking it by the lapel and telling all the donors right now that he's going to be the nominee. You got Rubio, you got Walker out there, you got Paul Ryan, he was on the ticket, but there are a lot of other names out there that people aren't even really talking about, like Susana Martinez in New Mexico, or you got Kelly Ayotte, a freshman senator from New Hampshire. There are some real rising stars in the party that I think want to ascend and at least look hard at a run.
All right, many thanks. Robert Costa, keeping an eye on the literary political scene down there in Washington, D.C. Chris and Guy, you're going to hang with us for a while. Up next on Kudlow, is the Republican Party really developing a growth, opportunity, and empowerment message for all Americans? I'm asking Republican National Committee Chairman Reince Priebus when the Kudlow Report comes right back.